At 10, we're live in Tel Aviv as Israel and America's war with Iran spills beyond the Middle East. The moment a US Navy submarine torpedoes an Iranian warship off the coast of Sri Lanka. More than 80 bodies are recovered, dozens more are missing.
America is winning, decisively, devastatingly, and without mercy. They are toast, and they know it.
President Trump is projecting a message of overwhelming force, but here in Washington, the questions from his political opponents are growing louder tonight.
Israel orders residents of southern Lebanon to leave as it steps up operations against the Iranian-backed Hezbollah. And an emotional reunion tonight as more Brits return home after being stranded for days by the war.
Also on the programme. This man, David Taylor, the husband of a Labour MP, is one of 3 people arrested on suspicion of spying for China. And a transformative new treatment for children born with severe epilepsy that could dramatically reduce seizures.
On BBC London, a former head of the Metropolitan Police anti-trafficking unit says it's time police investigated former Harrods boss Mohammed Al-Fayed for human trafficking.
Hello to you from Tel Aviv, where Israel and America's war with Iran has spilled across more borders, escalating far beyond the Middle East. The US has now sunk in international waters an Iranian warship off the coast of Sri Lanka, and Turkey has been targeted by an Iranian missile. Well, it was the US Defense Secretary who announced a submarine torpedo had sunk the warship, the Iris Dena, around 25 miles south of the city of Gaul. More than 80 bodies have so far been recovered. It's believed 180 people were on board. This is the first US attack on Iranian forces outside the Middle East in this conflict. And NATO air defenses had to intercept an Iranian missile heading towards southern Turkey. There is a large US airbase nearby at Incirlik, which could have been the target, but that hasn't been confirmed. Elsewhere, Israel says it's launched a 10th wave of airstrikes on targets across Iran, and it's issued evacuation orders for more people to leave southern Lebanon as Hezbollah positions are attacked in the capital Beirut. We'll be live in the city. And as a US-based human rights group estimates more than 1,000 Iranians have died in the conflict, we'll also be talking to some of those fleeing the country. It's thought the first UK government-chartered flight has left the Omani capital Muscat, evacuating some of the Britons stranded in the Gulf. We'll hear from some of those still unable to get home. Well, Jeremy Bowen, our international editor, has our top story tonight on the 5th day of this war.
This was another demonstration of American military power and a stark message to the Iranians that nowhere is safe for them. The US submarine's torpedo smashed into the stern of the Iranian frigate Dena.
In the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II.
A first for the Americans, who released photos. In fact, 44 years before this attack on the Iranian ship, a Royal Navy submarine sank the Argentinian cruiser General Belgrano, one of the most controversial actions of the 1982 Falklands War. The Sri Lankan Navy brought 32 survivors ashore. It seems that the Americans have decided that they can hit Iranian targets worldwide. Some of the rescued Iranians were walking wounded, others more seriously hurt. The attack will raise more questions about the legality of America's claim that this is a war of self-defense. In 5 days of war, huge uncertainty about the future has been imposed on more than 90 million Iranians. Whatever their views on the regime, living in a city, a country that is being bombed, can reduce people's lives to a daily test of endurance. The BBC received this message from Tehran from a man who wanted to stay anonymous.
I'm in Tehran. During the past 3 days, I was completely disconnected on the internet. Until yesterday, there was bombardment here, very heavy bombardment. The hour made no difference. 24 hours a day, they were bombing.
The traffic is moving in Tehran. Aspects of life are functioning. There are no doubts about America's capacity to destroy, but plenty about keeping its promises to help Iranians end years of authoritarian rule. There is no evidence of a coherent plan for what happens when the bombing stops, and increasing signs that the Iranian regime's ability to survive has been underestimated.
For the Iranian people, my heart breaks, truly. President Trump presented this as a historic generational opportunity, but it's actually looking like a historic generational disaster. The Iranian people in Iran have borne the price of the Islamic Republic's repressive capacity for 47 years, and I'm very worried that not only are they going to be left in a war-torn, devastated country with no economic prospects, but they will be facing further repression and brutality at the end of this war.
The Israelis released video of the view from one of their aircraft over Tehran. A missile circled in red sweeps past. Israel destroyed Iran's air defenses last year, which means the skies over Iran are wide open for Israeli and American pilots. Our colleagues at BBC Persian spoke to Iranians fleeing across the border to Turkey.
Honestly, people are completely stressed. The situation is critical. No one is really themselves. Because of the rising prices and everything that was already going on, people were already under a lot of pressure. And now that the war has started again, the situation has become even worse.
I was there for 1 month, but I feel like I aged 100 years. It was exhausting. It really wore me down.
Across the region, the war is still intensifying. In Lebanon, Iran's ally, Hezbollah, released a video of a drone attack. In what may be a separate incident, an Israeli tank inside Lebanon is circled and seems to take a direct hit. Israel, though, has much more firepower than Hezbollah since it scored a major victory over them in 2024. This is Tyre in South Lebanon tonight after more Israeli strikes. The health ministry in Beirut says more than 70 Lebanese have been killed in the last 2 days. Big questions for the whole Middle East include how long will this last and what will it take to end it? No one has answers yet. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News.
Well, in the last couple of hours or so, Donald Trump said the US and Israel are in a strong position in their war with Iran, and he vowed that they would continue forward against the Islamic Republic. He's also repeated his justifications for launching the war, saying when crazy people have nuclear weapons, bad things happen. Here's Tom Bateman.
The commander-in-chief is still campaigning at home, today pledging to bring down energy bills for Americans. But he started off talking about his war that could soon drive up those costs.
Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15. And we're going to continue to do well. We have the greatest military.
The strikes on Iran are killing more of those who could take charge, he said.
Their leadership is just rapidly going. Everybody that seems to want to be a leader, they end up dead. And it's an amazing thing that's taking place before your eyes, because for 47 years we were pushed around and we shouldn't have been.
The questions for Mr. Trump are getting louder about the attack's timing and its goals. Democrats have forced a vote in the Senate tonight trying to block his use of force. They are unlikely to succeed, but the debate is voicing some deep concerns. Meanwhile, no side has yet claimed responsibility after Saturday's reported strike that Iran said killed more than 160 people at a girls' school building. The White House today cautioned over Iranian propaganda, but with the US military already having said it was looking into it, I pressed the Defense Secretary over what more he knew.
Can you give us an update on what the administration knows, what you know now about the reported strike on a girls' school in southern Iran on Saturday?
All I can say is that we're investigating that. We, of course, never target civilian targets, but we're taking a look and investigating that. Red tie in front.
Just on the basis that with the information you would have, your reconnaissance abilities, ability to gather information, I mean, it's several days on now. So is there any clarity on whose munition this was?
We're investigating it. Thank you.
Donald Trump knows what he wants to destroy in Iran, its missiles and any hopes it harbours for a nuclear weapon. It is a message of overwhelming American and Israeli force. But there's no sign yet of the way it ends or what comes next.
Yeah, Tom, lots of confidence in US military power from Mr. Hegseth. Was there anything else that came out of that news conference?
Well, the defining message here was a very muscular one from the Defence Secretary that, in effect, they decide the way this goes. But, Clive, you know, one of the questions that came up to Pete Hegseth there was about that incident with the Turkish Defence Ministry having said that a NATO air system shot down an Iranian ballistic missile heading into Turkish airspace. Now, Turkey is, of course, a NATO member. The Defence Secretary was asked, would that trigger NATO's Article 5, its mutual defence pact? He said, well, he was aware of the incident, the shooting down, but he didn't have the sense it would trigger that clause. But it is a sign of how, despite the sense of strength being projected by the Americans, that they say they can control this situation, when it comes to the potential for the battle zone to enlarge, ways in which it may not be able to control, it is a further signal that President Trump may not be completely in charge of events in the way he is suggesting.
OK, Tom, thank you for that. Tom Bateman there in Washington. Well, since the conflict began on Saturday, the US military says it's hit nearly 2,000 targets in Iran, and Israel's Air Force says it's dropped more than 5,000 munitions. 5 days into the war, what are the strategies and goals of the two sides? Gordon Carrera, the BBC security analyst, has been looking at how the war is being waged.
In the war's fifth day, the strategies the two sides are pursuing are becoming clearer. Each is seeking different ways to inflict damage and pressure on the other.
The US and Israel have hit targets across Iran, including leadership figures like the Supreme Leader in the opening salvo, and military targets like air defence and missile launchers. These images from BBC Verify show an airbase in Zahedan. They've also hit some of the security infrastructure that supports the regime, like this site in Tehran. The aim is to undermine Iran's ability to fight and especially to fire missiles, and perhaps open up the way for the regime to collapse or be overthrown. Iran's response has been to launch missiles and drones across the Gulf. It says it's primarily targeting US and allied military bases and facilities in neighbouring countries, but it's also tried to strike economic targets, including refineries and hotels like this one in Dubai. Iran's aim is to inflict enough pain in terms of casualties and economic disruption to get Gulf states to pressure the US to back down. How much it has left in its arsenal, though, is unclear. Iran is also seeking to inflict pressure through the Straits of Hormuz. This is a narrow and vital shipping lane, less than 30 miles wide. About a fifth of the world's oil supply normally passes through here. Threats by Iran have led to its near closure. This tracker shows shipping the day before the war, when around 100 vessels a day passed through, and now when it's slowed to a trickle. The US says, if necessary, its Navy could escort ships to prevent a serious economic crisis.
In this war of attrition, can the US and Israel hunt down Iran's missiles and drones before they and Gulf allies run out of interceptors to shoot them down? And can Iran withstand the bombs and inflict enough pain to force the US and Israel to pull back? Gordon Carrera, BBC News.
Well, as we've been hearing, Israel has stepped up its military offensive in Lebanon. Hundreds of thousands of people living in the south of the country have been told to leave as Israeli troops move further beyond the border. Now, the Iranian-backed group Hezbollah says its forces are in direct clashes with Israel. Wira Davis is in the Lebanese capital Beirut for us tonight. Wira, a testing and dangerous time for so many people in the south of the country.
Yeah, look, Clive, there's increasing concern in Lebanon and indeed evidence that Israel is really stepping up the scope and scale of its military activities against Hezbollah, not just in southern parts of Beirut where Hezbollah is strong and along the southern border, but for example in Tyre tonight, in the southern city of Tyre, there have been intensive Israeli attacks against what are thought to be Hezbollah targets. We went to a site here in eastern Beirut, not a particularly strong Hezbollah area where there'd been an airstrike. And even as far east as the Bekaa Valley, 9 people were reported to have been killed in an Israeli airstrike. But the real concern, I think, and focus over the next few days will be southern Lebanon. The Israeli army has issued an evacuation warning and order for all residents south of the Litani River. That's about 250,000 people to leave that area within 24 hours for their own safety in anticipation of increasing Israeli attacks in the area. Indeed, an Israeli incursion, or even what some people here are calling an Israeli invasion. The United Nations has told the BBC tonight that Israeli troops are already inside villages in southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah itself has said there have been fierce clashes in villages well inside the border. So it's an ominous time ahead, and I think fighting, particularly in the south, is set to step up. Clive.
OK, thank you for that. We're Davis there live in Beirut. Sir Keir Starmer has been defending the UK's response to the Iran conflict after stinging criticism from Donald Trump for not allowing British military bases to initially be used for US airstrikes. The Prime Minister insisted it was crucial the UK acted on a lawful basis and there was a viable, thought-through plan for the conflict. Here's Chris Mason.
This is HMS Dragon, currently in Portsmouth. It's being loaded with ammunition and is expected to set off for waters near Cyprus next week. It can spot missiles and drones and is being sent to protect a British base on the island hit by a drone at the weekend.
The situation in the Middle East remains serious and volatile. This government will be resolute in our focus, protecting British lives, bringing our people home and safeguarding our national interest.
The Prime Minister has given America permission to take off from British runways on missions to bomb Iranian missile sites, but this hasn't happened yet. The Conservative leader wanted to know why the UK wasn't bombing those sites itself.
Iran is trying to kill our servicemen and women. He is catching arrows rather than stopping the archer. That's what we're talking about. Why is he asking our allies to do what we should be doing ourselves?
The Prime Minister didn't answer the question, but did set out what Britain is doing.
We're resupplying our air defence missiles today. Wildcat helicopters with anti-drone capabilities will be in Cyprus this week, and HMS Dragon will be deployed to the Mediterranean.
Then there is the potential economic impact of the war.
Experts are warning that families could see their energy bills rise by £500 a year as a result of Trump's illegal war. But millions of families and pensioners are already struggling to keep their heads above water thanks to years of a cost of living crisis.
Sir Keir said existing measures were cutting bills, but acknowledged how concerned many people are.
I was glad that we were able to bring energy price bills down by £150 announced just the other day. We will keep a very close eye on this. I do know how important it is for the British public.
And what of the relationship between the President and the Prime Minister?
This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
After those remarks yesterday, these today.
British jets are shooting down drones and missiles to protect American lives in the Middle East on our joint bases. That is the special relationship in action. Sharing intelligence every day to keep our people safe. That is the special relationship in action. Hanging on to President Trump's latest words is not the special relationship.
It'll be helicopters from this base near Yeovil in Somerset heading for Cyprus soon, armed with missiles capable of shooting down drones. Chris Mason, BBC News.
The first government evacuation flight to bring British nationals home is thought to have taken off from the Omani capital Muscat. 8 more commercial flights are due to leave the United Arab Emirates in the coming days. Some Brits have already made it home, but hundreds of thousands are still stranded. And they've been getting in touch with BBC Your Voice, as Mark Ashdown now reports.
Relieved to be home, these passengers arrived in Edinburgh this evening on a commercial flight from Dubai and are delighted to be back.
It's after bits. You just don't know how long it's got to take before you actually manage to get back.
How relieved are you to be home?
Oh, very relieved, definitely, very, yes.
And the flight was a long one on the way back, I can assure you, but we're glad to be back.
But thousands of people remain stranded across the Middle East. Poppy's flight from Singapore to London was diverted to Oman on Saturday. She says after a 5-hour wait, passengers were taken by bus to a hotel.
That was on Saturday evening. It's now Wednesday evening and I haven't heard anything from Qatar Airlines and it's been impossible to contact them. Some other passengers have booked alternative flights home at their own expense, but I haven't done that because prices have absolutely skyrocketed.
A government-chartered flight was due to leave Oman bound for London this evening. More are planned over the coming days. They're for British nationals, their spouse or partner and under 18s. Those eligible will have to pay for a seat. The Prime Minister said 130,000 people had been in contact to ask for help.
That yesterday more than 1,000 British nationals arrived back in the UK on commercial flights from the UAE. A further 8 flights are due to leave the UAE to the UK today.
Airspace over the Middle East remains severely restricted, with flights completely or partially suspended in about a dozen countries. It's causing problems for flight schedules globally. Katie contacted BBC Your Voice. She said she's one of 90 holidaymakers stranded in Bali because their flights home were cancelled. She has managed to rebook. The first available was via Seoul in 11 days' time. Meanwhile, the costs are racking up.
We were put up in a hotel, some on Sunday, some on Monday. We're still here at the moment. However, at lunchtime today, we were asked to vacate our rooms.
Emirates has already run services to London and Manchester. Virgin and British Airways are among those planning to restart flights soon. But it is a slow process. Uncertainty remains over how and when thousands of Brits will be able to return home. Mark Ashdown, BBC News.
The American embassy in Baghdad has told US nationals they should leave Iraq immediately. Now, the country's autonomous Kurdistan region in the north has been dragged into the war with Iran after US facilities were targeted, as well as Iranian Kurdish opposition groups. There is growing speculation that Donald Trump wants them to return to their homeland and join the fight. In fact, one senior leader has told the BBC he hopes it will happen soon. From Erbil in northern Iraq, here's Orla Gearin.
For now, they watch and they wait. Kurdish fighters from Iran in exile in northern Iraq. Could they soon be boots on the ground in their homeland? Many here believe that's what Donald Trump wants. Hello, very nice to meet you.
Hello, nice to meet you too.
Hassan, who's 25, can't wait. Hassan, what do you expect to happen in the coming days? Do you think you will be fighting soon inside Iran?
For sure. Everything and every sign is telling us that we will be there soon. We will carry on fighting to get our nation's rights inside Iran.
At this base today, no sign of a military build-up, but a long-held dream of toppling the regime. This veteran Kurdish opposition leader has been waiting for most of his life and says his group could be on home soil in days. If and when you cross the border, will you be working closely with the Americans and the Israelis? For example, will they be providing air support for you?
If our forces go in, we could face a very big fight from the regime, which has bases in all the cities close to the border. It will be easier for us if they get bombed by the Americans and the Israelis.
But the Iranians themselves are still doing plenty of bombing, targeting Kurdish opposition fighters in their bases. We were shown the aftermath of a deadly strike. The attack here happened just a few hours ago and the damage is extensive. This was the result of a ballistic missile. The building has been brought down. We've been told that 4 soldiers were wounded here and 1 has just died. This was Iran striking its enemies here in northern Iraq. One more sign that the war is spreading. Will the Kurds join in? The chatter is growing. For President Trump, it may look like an attractive option. For the Kurds, it may be one more chance to risk all for a homeland. Well, tonight there have been claims and denials. In the past hour or so, there have been reports on some US media claiming that, in fact, Kurdish opposition fighters have already crossed the border from here and gone inside Iran to begin some kind of offensive, some kind of attack. Now, that has been denied by two separate Kurdish opposition groups here. Earlier at the White House, President Trump's spokeswoman was asked about a claim that America was considering arming the Kurds to try to spark an uprising, and she denied that. What is clear is that there are members of the Kurdish opposition force who have been here for decades, who have been dreaming for all of that time of a chance to try to go home. The opposition leader who we spoke to today said this has been his dream every single day. He spoke of wanting to get back to his family and his village, and he told us about a cousin who has been in jail for 31 years in Iran for being a member of the Kurdish minority. What's less clear is what is happening on the other side of the border. We certainly have no indication at this stage that the Iranian security forces are abandoning their bases or moving away or giving up that territory. So for now, there is no suggestion that the Kurds are going to be able to move, even if they decide to do so.
All right, Ola, thank you for that. Ola Gearin, our senior international correspondent, live in Erbil in northern Iraq.